Our all-wheel drive S10 project, AKA the second gen Cyclone, definitely needs some help in the front suspension department, and that's what we're gonna take care of today. So we get a bunch of replacement parts that will get thrown in, hopefully get the truck back on the ground, because right now we have the rear end done and the front end project is sorta, kinda, well, it's maybe not quite halfway. So to get you up to speed, we've got ourselves a ZR2 cast iron front diff with an Olds Bravada all-wheel drive axle shaft in there. So we've got this ready for all-wheel drive. Out back, we have a matching ZR2 8.5 10 bolt that's wider and stronger than the original rear end. Plus we also added a sway bar, lowering leaf springs, and some Bilstein shocks. Basically, we're going for a quote-unquote pro touring, you know, more of a handling type vehicle than a drag racing type vehicle. So it's going to be lower. It's on some Corvette wheels. It's going to have a nice stance to it. Maybe some body kit parts from like a S10 Extreme. But anyway, the suspension is the name of the game today. So we just got a big shipment in of front end replacement parts. So let's just dive right in and see if we can get this truck sitting back on the ground where it belongs.
Idler arm, pitman arm, pair of upper control arms, lower control arm, pump stops, another lower control arm, and some miscellaneous stuff. Shorten these just a little bit to help the truck work at its lower ride height, so hopefully that's enough. You know, I was trim more later. I took probably half of an inch off, if that. I gotta say, these upper arms, these are Delphi brand. These are Mevotech brand below. These ones don't fit very good with all that grinding we had to do, but the Delphi's full range of motion, nothing hits, so I like this one a little better. So looking at these old parts, I am really glad we took the time to replace just everything. I mean, look how badly those bushings are just like cracked and dry rot and stuff. I already showed you the ball joints last time, but I'll put another little clip in here just to show you how much play this suspension setup had. So definitely a worthwhile, I don't even know if I want to say upgrade, because these are basically just stock replacement parts, but definitely
worthwhile maintenance. The lower control arms are slightly different than the originals, and that's only because we're going to a S10 four-door Blazer front sway bar, 34 millimeter, much thicker than the original. And the only real difference there in the control arm, as far as I can tell, just the mounting for the sway bar is in a little different spot. You can see this one is just inboard of the shock mount, where the original over here is outboard of the shock mount. So there's the sway bar, there's the shock mount. Not a major difference, but we want to run the thicker sway bar, so we're going to change the control arm. Other than that, with these Mevo Tech lowers, I did have to do a little bit of grinding just because of a clearance issue. I don't know if that's part of the aftermarket part or if that's because of Blazer arm going into an S10. But anyway, not a big deal, just a little bit of metal clearancing. We took care of that. So I'll get the other side knocked out. Still waiting on some wheel bearings though, because those of course are a little bit noisy, so I got a set on the way. But more or less, that's kind of what we're left with. We've got new uppers and lowers, new shocks, and of course new CV axles and the new differential. So we got the suspension basically done aside from the bearings, wheel bearings that I don't have just yet. So I'm going to move on to the steering now. I have been wanting to do an upgrade on this truck. A lot of you guys have mentioned it in the comments. You say do a ZQ8 S10 steering gearbox because it has a quicker ratio, which is going to be great for, you know, quick handling and things like that, because Pro Touring-esque is kind of the vibe we're going for. So I got probably what I would consider to be one of the best steering gearboxes that you can get. I actually used to do a bunch of technical writing for a diesel parts website, and as part of that, I did a ton of research on how redhead steering gearboxes work and how they remanufacture them. And I picked one up. So this is a 12-to-1 ratio, which I don't know if it's the same as the ZQ8. Everything I read online says the ZQ8 S10s have a 12.7-to-1. This is advertised as a 12.0-to-1 steering gearbox. So it's definitely going to be provide quicker steering than the stock four-wheel drive S10 box. And then not only that, it's a quicker ratio, but the way they build these boxes, everyone is like handmade, quote unquote, where they like fit these little recirculating worm gear balls. I don't understand how they work inside, but basically each one is custom fitted inside when they build these for like the best precise steering with no play. So now that we have all the steering and suspension joints, you know, freshened up, I figured what the heck, we got to do the same thing for the box. So yeah, definitely they're a little bit on the pricey side. You can go down to, you know, the parts store and get a reman steering gear for like 150, 200 bucks. But this is going to be a much nicer quality box. So I'm really excited to get it in. It's pretty tight under the S10 here. So I think what I'm going to do is just pull this wheel liner because once that's gone, you can see the box right there. So we'll dig in and get that thing on there. Actually, pretty darn good access to it with that air box pulled out. So just a quick test before we pull this thing apart. That's centered right there. So there is one, call it a half. So that should be about 3 turns lock to lock. 1, 2, 3. 1.5 is the middle. So the new box should be quite a bit quicker. 1 1/4 turns. 1 1/4 the other way. So that's what, 2.5 turns lock to lock? And the reason why we're putting old rusty brakes on is because eventually this will get Corvette brakes up front. C5 stuff, so no sense to put new S10 brakes on. I just don't want to spend the money for the Corvette brakes yet. You guys want to know an interesting fact? I think in this video alone, just rebuilding the front suspension, I've invested more money in parts than I have the entire truck. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. So over the last little bit, we got the rest of the front end put together. We got the truck up on the alignment rack. And of course, we are now ready to get this thing adjusted. If you take your car in for an alignment, this is pretty much the same sort of setup that they're gonna use. Basically, we got some targets that are mounted on each of the 4 wheels and lasers and sharks and something like that. Cool. The alignment thing is way out of whack right now. So the camber, very negative on both sides. We've got a lot of caster in it. There's a tiny bit of toe on this side. But anyway, we'll get it dialed in. And when we're done, this truck should handle and drive just like a brand new truck, maybe slightly better, hopefully. So the 2 most difficult ones to get set are, of course, caster and camber. I've got the camber equal on each side, which is kind of the most important to me. I'm trying to get caster equal as well, but the way the adjusters are working out, I'm only 1/10 off. But if I make the caster 3.2 then the camber goes to negative 0.2, and I'd rather have camber the same and caster be just a little bit off. So now that I've got all that locked down, just gonna dial in the toe, and we should be good to go. Should be. And that right there is what I love to see. Green bars everywhere, and side to side, everything is pretty much the same. Same camber, same toe, caster, ever so slightly off by 1/10 of a degree, so I'll take it. So I got the alignment done the other day. It's now Sunday, just about done with the video, and I gotta say, the S10 now drives so much better than it did before. Quick summary of everything we've done up to this point. Lowered the suspension front and rear about 3 inches. Completely rebuilt the front, added the 4-door Blazer sway bar, which is thicker. Out back, we lowered it, have the ZR2 rear end. We have the sway bar from the same Blazer where there was no rear sway bar previously. So all in all, with all the changes and upgrades that we have done, the truck now, it drives so much better than before. There's a bunch of traffic circles on the way home, and it's got flat handling. It's like not a Corvette by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely so much better than it was before. And it's kind of cool now because this is the first time that all 3 project vehicles have been in the same place at the same time. We've got the ugly truck, which you guys are familiar with. We've got the S10, and then we've got the 4-wheel drive drag truck, which is not quite a truck yet, it's a chassis. Been sitting just kind of neglected in the garage. I am gonna start on the engine very soon, possibly even in the next video. I want to get the heads on. I want to continue along with the valve train. And then really the S10 right now is at the perfect point. Phase 1 of the chassis is done, so I can drive it and I can enjoy it. Where before it was just super sketch, and now we can get to the fun part, which is adding power. I have thought, like in passing, it would be cool to put the 535 big block in the S10, but that's not really the vibe that we're going for. I really want a 6.2 aluminum LS in this one. I really need to find a body for this truck. And then I got some parts to sell. I figured while I'm here at the home garage, I started a Mustang build over a year ago. I purchased a 5.4 dual overhead cam, and I was gonna put that all together, but I sold the Mustang when I bought the shop, and the motor's just been sitting around. So if you want, it's an oddball, I get it. Not many people work on these old mod motors anymore, but I've got a 5.4 dual overhead cam with the Australian Boss 260 intake. I got the coolant crossover. I've got some 97 Cobra cams, which here from the mod motors, you know, that's probably the most aggressive factory intake cam they made. And I got a bunch of other odds and ends I'm trying to sell just to clean out the parts. The basement of the house is just filled with parts. So I got a bunch of stuff to clean out. Send me an email if you might be interested in any of that stuff. TolmanPerformance@gmail.com. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. S10 is doing great. It runs and drives. And the next thing that we need is to finish the all-wheel drive conversion and add more power.